Hi friends, this is Trish and welcome to Teacher Therapy. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I have been avoiding for 2 solid years, and that is the topic of administration. I've worked at 5 different schools, public, private, and charter, and have had over 15 administrators. So I've seen some things and I've heard some things. And of course, in this awesome community, you guys have shared so many of your stories, and a lot of you guys have asked to talk about this topic. And even though I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or throw all administrators under the bus, it's a topic that is too big to ignore. Administration matters so much. And when we're looking at the conversation of why so many teachers are quitting, a lack of support comes up over and over again. Truthfully, administrators really set the tone for their school. They can help decide whether a school is going to be collaborative or unhealthy and competitive. They set behavioral standards. They help parents understand how to treat the teachers. And most importantly, they have the opportunity to be an advocate for their teachers to the district administration. When this doesn't happen, the teaching environment can be toxic and miserable. And that's why I want to talk about 10 different principal problems that I've either seen or witnessed or heard of from other teachers. So let's look at these 10 issues, and they're in no particular order. Number 1 is a lack of support. As we've already mentioned, too many times students get rewarded for bad behavior. There has been times where I have literally sent misbehaving kids to the office and they came back with a t-shirt and a cupcake. And as you can imagine, they would actually act up in hopes of getting sent to the office. There's been other times where administrators have actually deleted my detentions out of the system as soon as parents complain. And speaking of parents, we are often not shielded from parental attacks. In one of my schools, they would literally send angry parents to a teacher's classroom without so much as calling to let them know that an angry parent was showing up. So I've had angry parents knock on my classroom door and I've had to step out and try to diffuse situations, and that is not a good look. On the other extreme, I've had situations where maybe parents were complaining about me or a student said something about me and went to administration and they actually never told me. To me, that's almost as bad because I had no way to defend myself, to set the record straight, or even to actually fix a problem if I sincerely did something wrong. Maybe I'm idealistic, but I truly think from an administrative standpoint, it'd be so good if principals could encourage parents to talk to teachers first before going over their head and going to the principal, because there's been way too many times where a parent is irate over something that didn't even happen because a student flat out made it up or they over exaggerated the story. So we need support from our administrators. Number 2 is favoritism. When I entered the teaching profession, I was really naive and I just assumed that everything would be fair. But quickly I found out that at many different schools, there is an inner circle. There are teachers that date principals. There's teachers that hang out with principals on the weekend. And of course, there's previous friendships that carry over in case a teacher ends up getting promoted to the principal level. Now, naturally, this means that certain teachers are untouchable. The dress code doesn't apply to them. And sometimes even behavioral and conduct standards don't quite apply to them. And I've even been at schools where administrators would specifically brag on certain teachers or grade levels and just go all out talking about how amazing they were, while all the other teachers just sat there and drooped. I literally even have had one principal that flat out named a teacher and said, "You guys all know that she's my favorite." So this can be a little rough on teacher morale. As teachers, we're always encouraged that even if we do have favorites, never let it be known. However, when we grow up and become teachers ourselves, sometimes principals forget this rule. Number 3, constant blame, shame, and gaslighting. I've been in certain schools where it is actually overtly encouraged for teachers to compete with each other. Test scores are plastered everywhere, and I even sat in on a professional development meeting where all the teachers' standardized testing scores from the previous year were broadcast on the board, and we were encouraged as groups to talk about why one teacher scored lower than the other. I've also been in schools that highly encourage teachers to observe other teachers and evaluate them. I totally understand that it's a widely known professional development practice to learn from other teachers, but it gets a little weird when we're supposed to be evaluating, critiquing, and giving negative feedback to our coworkers. I've also been at schools that have a tendency to punish all the teachers for one teacher's mistake. So sometime that looked like all of us getting really angry emails for something that we didn't even do. But more seriously, a lot of times blanket rules were made because one teacher did something that an administrator didn't like. One quick example I could think of is the Donors Choose program. That is a program where teachers' friends, families, community members, and even different corporations and charities could actually donate to teachers to help fund classroom supplies, field trips, all kind of amazing things. And it was so helpful. I was able to raise over $1,000 for class sets of novels, but one year, apparently one teacher did a Donors Choose and got some things, I don't know if they were like beanbag chairs or something, that the administrator didn't like. So then they put a blanket ban on everyone so that nobody could raise money to get supplies. Now, of course, that wasn't replaced with teachers actually getting money from the school district. It was just another way where we couldn't get help anymore. And speaking of those novels, after raising all of that money and getting those amazing novels, I was later told in that same school year that I could no longer teach from whole class novels. And things like this would happen all the time. If an administrator walked into one teacher's room and saw them using some kind of instructional strategy that they didn't like, then all of a sudden everybody was impacted. As teachers, we're taught to differentiate instruction, meaning we meet each and every student where they are and give them specific targeted feedback and support. But for teachers, this rarely happens. We're just all treated as if we're the same. So a teacher with 30 years of experience is treated the same way as a teacher with 2 months of experience. I'm sure it's not easy as an administrator to know each and every teacher's strength and weakness and work with that teacher individually. However, as teachers, we're always expected to do that, even if we have 150 students. But we'll move on from that one. Number 4 is toxic positivity and PR driven. Now, this might look different than the last setting I described that was all about blame and shame and gaslighting. Toxic positivity is all about making sure that everybody looks super happy and cheery. I had one school that was obsessed with Twitter. The administrators would bust in the room with literal cameras and start recording things and uploading them to Twitter without any kind of permission. They would bust into our teacher meetings and start recording us as we're talking to our colleagues and then upload it to Twitter. We were encouraged to take pictures and videos and upload them to Twitter. It was all about optics and appearance and making it look like everything was super happy and amazing, when that wasn't always the case. There was another school during my first couple of years of teaching where I guess in maybe some kind of survey, some teachers said that they would like more time to collaborate with colleagues during professional development days, but the administration took that as an opportunity to do forced fun time on Friday mornings. And I don't know about you, but for me, I really like to use Friday mornings to prepare for Monday so I wasn't taking home like tons of work over the weekend. But instead, we were forced to go to these awful meetings where we like did weird yoga together. Or made up different fun things to do. And to make matters worse, different teachers were actually assigned to be the ones that came up with the fun activity. So it's not even like the administration was planning these things for us. So it was a double whammy. You've got to show up to a forced meeting and be happy on Friday morning. Oh, and you need to plan it too. But I'm not bitter over that at all. That same school thought it would be a great idea to do forced after-school meetings where we shared our gratitudes at the end of the day. And at almost all of my schools, during staff meetings, we would do all kind of icebreakers and supposedly fun games, which I always dreaded as an introvert. And all of those things aren't that bad. But the thing that really got to me with the toxic positivity culture is that we couldn't really talk about problems or things that were going wrong. We were going to be branded as being negative if we ever mentioned something not being happy and shiny. Then there's number 5, the missing in action administrators. These administrators would specifically tell us never to send kids to the office because they were not there for that. They oftentimes couldn't be located or reached by phone. Whenever teacher to teacher issues came up, they would not be involved in mediating those issues and helping out. And they definitely weren't inclined to help with difficult parent situations. Thankfully, I did not have many administrators that were like this, but I've certainly heard stories from other teachers. Number 6, 6, there were piles and piles of unnecessary tasks and paperwork, and sometimes even unpaid labor. In some of my schools, there was a huge pressure to attend evening events at the school. So that would include musical performances, shows, theater performances, different events that committees would lead. And of course, we weren't paid for those events. Sometimes we also had certain duties that we had to stay late for school, but then we wouldn't get paid extra. One of those for me was parent pickup duty, and sometimes we would have to wait if a kid's parent didn't pick them up. And maybe our contract time ended at 3:25, but we might have to be at the school till 4 o'clock, and we didn't get paid for any of that extra time. Sometimes we would get forced to chair committees or be a team lead, even if we didn't want to, and even though that came with a ton of extra work and responsibilities, but you can't say no. We were also told that we had to do some kind of tutoring, so it could be before school or after school, and thankfully, at least we got paid for doing tutoring, but there was still that pressure to spend extra time working even if we didn't really want to. And of course, as all teachers know, there's mountains and mountains of data collection, paperwork, meetings, committees, all kind of things that we have to be involved with, even if it's using up all of our time. Number 7 is inconsistency. A lot of times administration would make school rules, but then they wouldn't support us in actually enforcing those rules, even when half the school was not following the rule. Or maybe they would come up with different incentives or rewards programs that might happen for 2 months out of the school year, then they would magically disappear. It was also really common to have our procedures, policies, and rules completely dismantled if a few parents complained about it. The tough thing about that is that teachers are often the face of the administration and the school district, so we had to be the ones that would get on the phone and communicate with parents and put out fires and clear up misunderstandings, only to have everything change, and then we had to do that all over again. And naturally, we can't really get into details about why things are changing. We just have to kind of do our best to make up whatever we need to say to a certain parent on the phone. And that is super stressful. Number 8 is micromanaging and nitpicking. This is totally opposite of the missing in action administration. This type of administrator is in your business what feels like every minute of every day, but not necessarily over things that matter. It would be over things like bulletin boards, data walls. Do you have the I can statement written on your dry erase board? These administrators love constant observations and pop-ins, which I don't know about you, but that was super stressful for me. Some of them also loved overly detailed, overly complicated lesson plans that would take hours to fill out. As we mentioned earlier, they also wanted documentation and paperwork filled out over every little thing. And I understand that sometimes these are district mandates that get passed to the principal and the principal has to pass it to the teacher. I've had some administrators that I think they just did this stuff for fun because, you know, teachers talk and teachers at other schools were not having to do these same things. So that gets honestly really frustrating. And I touched on this earlier, but some of the micromanaging administrators would make blanket and sweeping changes to individual teachers' classrooms over one 10-minute observation without sitting down with that teacher, talking to them, getting their rationale, finding out why they were making certain instructional decisions. They would just see one little thing and one little snippet of time and say, I don't like this, you can't do it anymore. Okay, number 9 is going to be a rough one. It's having a fragile ego, being petty, and sometimes even being a bully. Ouch, I know that was rough. Thankfully, I have not had a ton of administrators that are like this, but I do remember one instance from a vice principal in my early years of teaching, and this person had been a teacher and got promoted. If my memory serves me, it might have even been in the middle of the year. And I think this person, maybe because they were really young and some teachers had questions about why they got promoted, they had a really fragile ego. And I think this will have to be a story for another video. I ended up getting written up over something ridiculous that was genuinely a misunderstanding. But this person wrote up this whole long, crazy write-up and accused me of breaking a student's 504 plan, which is a legally binding document that you could be sued over, and put it in my permanent file. And even when I had documentation and backup and witnesses and all kinds of ducks in a row, this person simply refused to do anything about it. And they just said, if you have a problem, then you can go to HR. And as you can imagine, I went to HR and I found out that HR basically exists to protect administrators, not really workers and teachers. So it went as you expected. That never got fixed or rectified, even though it was totally wrong. But at the end of the day, the reason this person did this is that they thought I was undermining undermining their authority. And as kind of a power move, they wanted to put me in my place, even if it meant them sort of making up things, taking it out of context, and creating a whole mountain out of a molehill. Ironically, when it was time for me to leave that school, this person was one of the saddest people to see me go. And then number 10 is sort of a catch-all for everything that I didn't already mention, but too often administrators forget what it was like to be a teacher. Or maybe they were in the classroom for such a short time that they never realized what it was really like to be a teacher. And I've heard this over and over again, but for teacher-administrator relationships, feeling like they don't empathize or care or even remember what it's like is one of the hardest aspects of taking feedback sometimes, because it ends up feeling like they don't really care about their teachers, that they're just trying to cover their own behind. Now, I fully want to acknowledge that a job of a principal is really, really hard. They are trying to please teachers, parents, students, district administration, and the overall general public and community. So it's got to feel like a no-win situation for them sometimes. And just like teachers, I completely understand that a lot of times they get directives from above their head that they have to enforce, and they're not free to really express the fact that they disagree with district level decisions. They also have to try to figure out a way to keep their job. And I totally get that. That is so hard. And sometimes it might feel to them like they have divided interests. On the one hand, they want to cover and help their teachers and be a support for them. But on the other hand, they have the district screaming at them about data and standardized testing and numbers and pressuring them to have less and less office referrals and less suspensions. So just like teachers feel like they have their hands tied, I think that's also true of administrators. I think there are a lot of administrators that got into the profession with good intentions, just like teachers. But they find out quickly that they are not as free to run their school the way they want. And they have people that are possibly micromanaging them and stressing them out. I've had multiple administrators actually have to leave, retire, or quit because of the stress of the job. So just like I encourage people to have grace on teachers, I definitely want to have grace on administrators. But this just again shows me that overall something about this system has to change, because the way that school is going, we are losing so many teachers. I think trying to be a good administrator is a lot like trying to be a good politician. It's certainly possible, but the system makes it really hard and squeezes out the good ones, unfortunately. So I just want to give kudos to any principals out there that are watching this, that are continuing to fight the good fight and support your teachers, while also keeping your job and feeding your family. I don't want to underestimate how hard that is. And I would love to hear from everyone in the comments, whether you're a principal, a teacher, or just someone who came across my video today. What have your experiences been like with administration? Did I miss anything or leave anything out? I know that this might have been a tough video for a few people out there, but that's kind of why I named this channel Teacher Therapy. Sometimes you've got to get out the bad and the yucky stuff so you can process it, make sure you're seeing things clearly and correctly, and actually recover and get better. And that's what I sincerely hope for the educational system. So thanks again. As always, let me know if there's any video ideas that you want to see. And if you haven't already, I'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this on social media or with a friend. Have a great day. I'll see you guys next time.